Hi, everyone.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's Wednesday, September 7th, 2022 at 6 p.m. It's a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. I'll ask our city clerk to please give us a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Peak,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Amelia,
Here.
Councilmember Coletti,
Here.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Here.
Councilmember McAdams,
Here.
Councilmember Baduri,
Here.
and Councilmember Smith is absent.
Thank you. First order of business is remote teleconference AB 361. Ms. Kendall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our monthly review of Assembly Bill 361, which requires a city within 30 days of holding a virtual meeting for the first time and every 30 days thereafter to make findings ratifying the state of the emergency. Council ratified Resolution 21029 first on October 6, 2021, and has ratified it monthly since. Staff recommends the council ratify said resolution authorizing remote teleconference meetings of all city legislative bodies for the following 30 days in accord with the Ralph M. Brown Act. This concludes staff's report. Thank you.
And we need public comment. That's next. Yes. No, hold on. We're doing AB 361. This is something that we have to do every 30 days to have Zoom meetings. Does someone have, are they on, are someone on Zoom? Getting a little feedback. Okay, so I'll ask, so no public comment
No public comment
on this
online.
particular item. All right, council,
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
okay, who made the motion?
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Okay, and that was seconded by Councilmember McAdams. May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Amelia,
Aye.
Councilmember McAdams,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmembers Coletti.
Aye.
Tomlinson
Aye.
and Baduri.
Aye.
Motion carries 601. Councilmember Smith absent.
Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, Mayor Pro Tem Emilio?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, Your Honor.
And a second,
Second.
and a vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Amelia,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmembers McAdams,
Aye.
Baduri.
Aye.
Coletti.
Aye.
Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 601 to approve the agenda.
We have one presentation, and it's Mayor's Proclamation recognizing the 75th anniversary, the 75th birthday of Monterey Peninsula College, started in 1947. And we've already sent the proclamation over to MPC at their ceremonies on the 75th anniversary. And I was thinking there was going to be a representative from MPC here tonight, but seeing that that hasn't happened. I'm just going to paraphrase the proclamation. It's pretty outstanding that MPC has grown and become a real fixture in the community, helping our youth. I just will grab one statistic to illustrate how important MPC is to Pacific Grove. Half the students that graduate from high school in Pacific Grove that go to college go to MPC. So I think that just speaks volumes to how good an institution it is and has become. And if you want to see the rest of the proclamation, it's in the agenda packet. Any comments? Okay. Moving on to council and staff announcements. Mr. Harvey?
No, Mr. Mayor, we have no announcements tonight. Thank you.
And our city attorney, Mr. Pyrrhic. Do you have any announcements?
I have no announcements this afternoon.
Okay. Council member announcements. Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Quick announcement regarding the draft forest management plan for George Washington Park that's currently being circulated. The comment period extends through September 14th next week. And then there will be a meeting held on October 12th at with the BNRC, Beautification Natural Resources Commission, where they will be discussing that draft and the comments supplied by the public. Thank you.
And I have one announcement, the Pacific Grove Candidate Forum, that's candidates for city council and mayor, is to be held on Tuesday, September 20th, starting at 6 p.m. at the community center. And that's sponsored by the Pacific Grove Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters, Monterey County. All right, moving on to public comment. We'll take,
Mr. Mayor, I see Councilmember McAdams has her hand raised.
oh, okay. Thank you. Councilmember McAdams. Oh, we've got a couple virtual. Councilmember McAdams and then Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. Labor Day weekend was very, very busy. So I just wanted to extend some gratitude to staff and also to the members of the public who diligently, after we have busy weekends, go around our beaches, the recreation trail, and our neighborhoods and pick up trash. So thank you to everybody. It was busy, it was beautiful weather, and I hope that our local businesses had a very busy holiday weekend. Thanks.
Pro Tem Emilio.
Yes, thank you. Actually, ditto on that, Councilmember McAdams, this was my comment. The only other comment was Monterey County Visitors Association, that represents all Pacific Grove and everything. They had close to $8 million in funds, which also include, spent in the county, which also included Pacific Grove. I also wanted to compliment the Public Works for their gallant effort for picking up a lot of the trash during Labor Day weekend when people were leaving their homes at 116 degrees and trying to cool off on this area. That's all.
All right, now we're on to general public comment. For those here today, if you'd like to make a general public comment, please come to the podium. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to be here, council members and everybody on Zoom. My name is Mike Gibbs. I'm a resident of Pacific Grove. Been coming here a long time. I'm sure you heard that story before.
Mr. Gibbs, could you talk more into the microphone?
into the microphone.
It's only about
And
6
so
inches
Mike
away.
Gibbs, been here for a while. I'm a grandfather of 3 and I'm a psychologist. And I worked in the past many years ago at the VA and several mental health hospitals. And my comment today is about the Measure M, which I think is the cannabis measure, if I'm not mistaken. And I've been talking to a lot of people, candidates for the city council and others, and it seems like the main payoff is the money. And I read the proposition and it's proposing $300,000. And maybe my math is off, but my fourth grade teacher taught me how to multiply, and that comes out to be $5 million of sales. And that's more than all the alcohol sales in the city of Pacific Grove, alcohol store sales. So maybe somebody's smoking some product when they came up with the number. I just like to know what the source is. So maybe somebody could answer that for me. But there's always a cost benefit. So the benefit is the money. The cost is everything else associated with it. And I've had plenty of experience with ER visits and treating people with, coming in for marijuana overdoses. So it affects that. There's a cost associated with that treatment and lost productivity, which is absolutely huge. Another cost is crime. Willie Sutton used to say, I rob banks because that's where the money is. If you pay attention to what's going on in the Bay Area, they rob cannabis stores because it's all cash and that's where the money is. So I think who wants to have a business next to a cannabis business? I'm not sure. So one of the things it says in the fourth proposition is that it will actually lower illicit cannabis in the area, and that's exactly the opposite of what's been found in states like Colorado. It creates a bigger market, and the cheaper product fills that market. And you guys raise taxes. Monterey County growers have asked for a tax holiday on all their past taxes, the cannabis growers, right? And they've asked for a 0% tax rate going forward. That number doesn't factor in the 300,000, I'm pretty sure. So I'm just here to say, if you're going to make a market, know exactly what the cost benefit ratio is. And I think the cost is way too high for all the reasons that I mentioned. One last thing I'd ask you to do is, if you'd like to do a little bit of research on the effect of marijuana and THC, high potency THC, go check and see. If you don't know what dabbing is, or you don't know what a dab is, Google it. You got to get about the third or fourth page, you get past all the cannabis sponsored sites. So check that out. All I have to say is I'm against them. Cost is too high.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council people, city staff, and the few people who actually come live to these meetings. Very small turnout, but thank you for coming. My name is Vincent Tuminello. I'm a longtime Pacific Grove resident, and I've been attending the city council meetings on and off for 25 years. And some of you know me personally because of that. I'm here because of a few minor issues. Number one, I think you guys should go over to the Ace Hardware and buy some of those paper hawks that they have, because it's a mess out here. The wall is covered with seagull poop. The pavement is covered with seagull poop, even the garbage can. And the signs are covered with seagull poop. And it's just abhorrent. It's horrible. It smells, it's disease ridden anyway. So please address that if you can. Okay, mainly I like what Mike just said up here at the microphone. He spoke in opposition to having a marijuana, a retail store in Pacific Grove. And I'll tell you why I'm opposed to it. Because we're turning the city into drug dealership. Even though it's legal in California, it's not federally recognized. That's why it's all cash, because the banks don't recognize these businesses. So just because something's illegal in California doesn't mean you should be doing it. Okay, let's take a look at that. Alcohol's legal, and look at the alcohol abuse and addiction that we have in this country. What kind of addiction you think we have with marijuana? I bet we all know somebody or have known somebody who was addicted to marijuana, and they probably never amounted to much. Very few people have. I do know one or two people that say that they're consistent smokers, but I don't think we need to have that reputation in America's last hometown, Butterflyville, USA. And that's why I don't think it's a good idea. Besides the point, even if that $300,000 is accurate, which Mike referred to, I think you'll waste the money. I don't think it's going to help the city at all. Every time we raise taxes, let's take a look at Mr. Coletti's involvement with trying to oppose the added sewer tax. What is it, $68 a month for years, supposed to be used for capital improvements? Instead, we don't even really know where the money's going. I don't see any capital improvements. Maybe you know there's some somewhere, but citizens don't see it. All I see is a bill every 2 months for an extra $68 for the sewer tax for the city of Pacific Grove. That's a lot of money over these years. Where's all that money gone? Is it into the general fund or is it really going for sewer repairs? Okay, this is just one example. Then we've got all the debt that the city's acquired over the years, the pensions, the CalPERS, the constant raises that every time it comes along, the council's very happy to issue a raise to the city employees or overpay oftentimes, in my opinion, for contracts. So I want to thank you for taking my opinion and please enjoy the evening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Darla Vining, Bayview Avenue and Pacific Grove. I just want to reiterate what Mayor Peak said earlier about MPC. I'm a graduate of PG High and MPC was my first associate's degree. So everything that you said, Mayor Peak, is true. I also want to say that two of my mentors were instructors that I had at MPC, and they've always made themselves available. And I talk to them twice a year. So definitely want to share that MPC is a great school. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Dixie Lane, and I am here to talk about Butterfly Days. We're just 3 weeks away, 3 weeks and a day, and it's getting really exciting. It's been 3 years since we've celebrated it, and lots has changed, but what hasn't changed is the enthusiasm for the event and our children marching in the parade and the PTA putting on the bazaar. This year we have, I think we overachieved. My exhaustion probably is proof of that, but it is just wonderful. We have a lot of new events and we have a lot of new supporters. The youth ambassadors have joined us. The Kiwanis Club has joined us. And I can't remember the others, but we have some new great partnerships and of course, all the standing ones. We're starting Friday night this year. For the first time that I've been doing it, we don't have First Friday coordinated with Butterfly Days because for the Friday before Butterfly Days is September 30th. So we're creating our own little carnivalesque event downtown, and I think it's going to be fun. And we have some real great surprises. Saturday, we have all the traditional fan favorite events. And then we have something, I think it's going to be spectacular Saturday. Late afternoon, evening. It's a sunset celebration at the Lighthouse. So come out for some sips and bites. The tickets are available on the Butterfly Days PG website. And Sunday, a lot of events. And we have some of the new ones, or we have an ice cream roll in honor of Don Beals. It's a memorial to him. He always made the peppermint ice cream, homemade ice cream for all of us at so many events. But we hope to see all of you out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. And 3 weeks.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anyone in our virtual audience wishing to speak?
We do. Carmelita Garcia.
Welcome.
Hi, and thank you for all your service and what beautiful weather we're having and such a lovely evening. I want to give a shout out to Public Works. If any of you have noticed the lovely benches installed at Jewel Park, and they really, really brighten up the area. I've actually seen people utilizing them, so that's just really wonderful. And I don't know if any announcement was made. However, I wanted to share with you Carrie Broker. She's the upper management with the Peace of Mind Dog Rescue, which was founded in October of 2009. She was named by CNN as the July hero, and that is really quite phenomenal. Not only for the organization, but for Pacific Grove. I mean, it's great recognition. And the primary function of the Peace of Mind Dog Rescue is to help seniors keep their dogs and help care for them when they get to the point that they're not able to do that anymore. And then Finally, I just want to mention, I keep forgetting that the city clock is off. If maybe someone could put the correct time on it. And if it does need to be repaired, just a reminder that there is a separate city fund to take care of that clock. So thank you very much. Enjoy the ongoing wonderful weather and stay safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands are raised.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Anyone from council wishing to pull an item from the consent agenda? Anyone from the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item?
I do have a hand raised. Jane Haynes.
Yes, I would like to pull item 8A from the consent agenda.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other items? Let's hear that as 12A.
We have one other hand. Carmelita Garcia.
Oh, no. Oh, you see.
Okay, we've got it. One item pulled, item 8A. That's the Butterfly Sanctuary Annual Report. Okay, motion to approve the modified consent agenda.
Move to approve.
And a vote, please.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti.
Aye.
Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Aye.
Members McAdams
Aye.
and Paduri.
Aye.
Motion carries 601. Councilmember Smith absent.
Thank you. Briefly, what we just did was we have approved council minutes from August 17th. We've held a second reading and amended the city's conflict of interest code. And we've received a report on local emergency actions and minutes from the Beautification and Natural Resources Committee from July, Economic Development Commission meetings in June and July, and the Traffic Safety Commission in May and July. So that brings us to the former 8A. Mr. Go, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Peak, members of the City Council. I believe this is my first presentation back with the hybrid. I'm kind of excited to be here and do it. Thank you. And I'm going to take this opportunity of this item being pulled to introduce our new environmental program manager, Mr. George First, who's been with the city for a couple months. I took on the sanctuary prior to George being with the city this year. So all things moving forward related to the sanctuary will be in his purview after this management plan is implemented. I just wanted to make that announcement. He's here for any questions tonight as we move forward. I do have a brief presentation that I presented to the BNRC, which I provided to the city clerk today. In case this item got pulled, I'd be more than happy to give it. So tonight we're here to discuss the Pacific Grove Monarch Sanctuary annual management plan or maintenance plan. We do this. Next slide, please, Carrie. We do this report every year, and the city has contracted with Creekside Center for Earth Observations. And what Creekside specializes in is challenging conservation problems, and they address those problems by means of science and technology. In 1992, the property was transferred to the city, and oversight of the property is done by California Fish and Wildlife. We constantly communicate all activities with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Sanctuary receives hundreds of visitors daily. This year in the week, on the weekends during overwintering, we had thousands of visitors daily. Next slide. I know this is tough to see, but this alludes to the monarch counts over the last 6 years or so. In 2016, as you can see, we had 17,100, with California approximately at 300,000. We began to see a decline until 2020, where we had 0 actually at the sanctuary. But let's put it into perspective. The state of California had just under 2,000 in all of their sanctuaries. So it was just not a siloed event that occurred in Pacific Grove. This was a state region, a national issue, hence why the monarch is being considered for a federally listed species. But we rebounded. Just last year, we had 13,600, and the state of California had approximately 250,000. That's what's baffling the scientists today. Why did we go from 0 to almost 250,000 in the state of California? Next slide, please. So what are the management highlights for 2022? We've got 2 tall, dead standing Monterey pines, which we need to remove. We've been monitoring these pines for the last few years. We've let them stand dead as they were providing some wind shelter, some relief from that, but they're now posing a danger to other trees that are within the sanctuary. If those trees fall, they're going to take out trees that we need to grow up and be the windbreak over the next 5 to 10 years. We also have a couple of Monterey cypress in the center of the sanctuary that we need to thin out. They're overcrowding each other. If we thin 2 of them, we'll accelerate the growth of the other cypress, which will ultimately provide better windbreak for the sanctuary. We'll do some general path cleanup. And we have retained the services of a horticultural consultant that is going to give us a program for proper care of the nectar beds. Next slide, please. So this is one of the dead pines that's east of the nectar beds. As you can see, it's right in the middle of the screen. If it falls, it could jeopardize those healthy trees. Next slide. We also have a dead pine towards the path. If it falls, it will take out a healthy pine, but also some cypress trees that we have. It's right next to the path. We're going to remove the top, leave that as a snag, and continue to monitor it because it's infested with bark beetle. So we're going to monitor that tree and try to slow the bark beetle from going into the healthy pines within the sanctuary. Next slide. This is a picture of the cypresses that are clustered in the middle. We'll remove a couple of those, as I alluded to. Next slide, please. And this is a slide that you've all seen before, but it really shows the sanctuary over the last, this was in 2007, when Brokaw Hall still stood. You could see the vast open areas. Next slide. This is 2018. You could see where that trail is, where Brokaw Hall once was, and how the canopy has really thickened throughout the sanctuary. Next slide, please. So we did host a site walk. We do this annually. It's a program that Public Works and myself started about 6 years ago. Annually, we do a walkthrough to discuss with members of the public our maintenance activities for the current overwintering season. This year, we hosted it on August 26th, and we had over 40 participants there. It was a fabulous day, the weather, and Dr. Stu Weiss was there and answered questions as we walked through the sanctuary. We plan to implement the work associated with this maintenance management plan in the next few weeks prior to the overwintering, which begins in October. Thank you, and that concludes my report. George and I are here for any questions.
Do we have any public comment? Please, sir, please come to the podium. Thank you. Welcome.
Been a resident here since
1978. How many people did you hire to help you with this project? Or how many firms? Or these are all people that are part of the city?
Well, it's not a Q&A right
Oh.
now, but to your questions duly noted.
I
So
thought he asked
I'm
for
sure
questions.
we'll address that in a moment. But do you have any other comments to
Okay,
make?
yeah, okay, because it seems like we keep hiring people. And like we was just stated, we don't know why the butterflies left. We don't know why they came back. But we seem to be paying a lot of people a lot of money to give us no answers. Okay.
Thank you. Welcome.
I just, first of all, I'm Dixie Lane. I'm president of the Friends of the Monarchs, and I am one of the volunteers that caretake the sanctuary. And when this presentation was made at BNRC, our science officer and secretary, Dominic Senacropi, responded with a well thought out paper. And I made some comments myself, as did others. And we also had a volunteer meeting around the same time, and we had talking with George, and we have our monthly meetings and everything. We have a lot of questions and we have a lot of concerns, and we've placed them before the BNRC, as is protocol. And I don't ever see how they get from the BNRC. They're not mentioned in this presentation, and maybe that's not the place, so that you understand that there's other views. So anyway, I didn't know this was coming up, but since I'm here, I thought I might speak.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We do have one caller online. Jane Haynes.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I realize this is a consent agenda item to receive a report only. But since the only time my name has ever appeared in the Wall Street Journal was back in the 1990s, when I gave Mayor Maury Fisher a bouquet of flowers because he changed his vote to not allow subdivision of Mrs. Dively's butterfly habitat. So I will address that. Subsequent to Maury's tie-breaking vote, Mrs. Dively, the property owner, and her land use attorney, the esteemed Brian Finnegan, settled a lawsuit that Mrs. Dively brought against the city for a taking in exchange for the city's agreement that if a majority of PG residents approved, the city would use revenue from a bond to pay a specified amount to Mrs. Dively for the habitat. I and others spent hours going house to house to get what was ultimately a firm majority vote to support the bond. The Wall Street Journal covered this, describing Pacific Grove as a city where its residents would tax themselves to protect monarch butterfly habitat. In the intervening years, I've watched the sanctuary deteriorate, pursuant to management plans by a scientist who apparently never experienced what I experienced, which was that I couldn't see out of my windshield in the 1990s until I shooed away all the monarch butterflies. The yearly management reports for the sanctuary, such as you have before you tonight, are based on what 2020 newcomer Dr. Dominic Senacropi calls false data, meaning data that is taken from the public records and bears little or no resemblance to what is actually happening at Pacific Grove's Monarch Sanctuary. For the past 2 years, 7 people, among them Dr. Senacropi, Dixie Lane, Francis Great, and others, have volunteered several hours weekly, every week, to work at the sanctuary, gathering on-site data. Yet none of those 7 people were interviewed for the report that is before you tonight. I urge you not to accept that report until you've heard from the volunteers, including Dr. Senacropi, Dixie Lane, Francis Great, and others who have spent hours every week since volunteering at the Pacific Grove Monarch Sanctuary to assemble actual data, not false data. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other hands are raised, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'll conclude public comment. And now for council discussion. Who would like to go first? I can't see our virtual participants anymore. So Ms. Candell, if you can help me, we still have 3 council members virtual.
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Tomlinson.
Sure, happy to go first. I thank you for the report. And I guess I have a question, kind of in line with what Ms. Haynes brought up and Ms. Lane, who, if there are, things being discussed at the beautification board, what would be the appropriate process for us to receive that knowledge and report as well? Is there a time when that will be brought to council for us to receive that data?
Councilmember Tomlinson, through the mayor, I believe that the person that is being discussed, Dominic, did send that his report to the city council. I could always dig that up via an email. I can always dig that up and provide that to you if you would like.
Yeah, if you could resend it.
Sure.
I missed it, so
Absolutely.
maybe others did too, but that would be great. Thank you. And it's really nice to meet you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. And yeah, welcome to Mr. First. I'm glad there'll be someone dedicated and interested in the preservation of the habitat citywide. I guess this kind of, in reading Jane Haynes's email this morning, it sounds like it's this report that we get is just kind of, it's just become kind of a rehash. There's no real new information, promises or objectives that were outlined for a previous year, then get rolled over to the next year. So I guess in general, how do we manage these contractors that we're hiring to actually provide us with the services that we are paying for? What's the metric of performance?
Councilmember Coletti, through the mayor, could respond to that. It's on, yes. So you're looking for an actual matrix that we use to judge the consultant, is that correct? Or just the process that's taken to get to the point where we have this report developed?
Well, I said metric, sorry. How do you evaluate the performance and the goals? I'm just like any employee, I suppose, even if he's a contractor, you set out objectives and goals and you monitor the progress throughout the year. And it seems like, at least based on the email we received from Mrs. Haynes, that some of the current, or some of the previous rather, objectives are now, they didn't get realized and now they're just being repeated, in subsequent years. So the question is, how are goals established and performance measured?
Councilmember Coletti, through the mayor, the scope of the services that are provided in the contract with Creekside Center for Earth Observation and Dr. Stu Weiss are clearly laid out. The scope is for him to come in, do an evaluation throughout the time of the overwintering, evaluate the trees, the monarch butterflies, work with the Museum of Natural History and their programs, and then do subsequent walkthroughs after the overwintering time with our city arborist and our public works department to come up with a strategy for the techniques to properly care for the sanctuary in the following year prior to the next overwintering. The scope doesn't have specific matrix like to see X amount of more butterflies in the next year. I mean, we just can't quantify that type of work. He's strictly coming in and looking at it from a lens of scientific proof of the monarchs and their reaction to our ecology and our habitat within the sanctuary. And then he's giving us reports based on that scientific proof to best manage the sanctuary moving forward. The items that were noted in Ms. Haynes' email are a larger topic that has been expressed to the city council in the past. And I don't have the email in front of me for that. I apologize. But, and George can maybe allude to this a little bit more. We're working on a larger project through the Regional Conservation District, correct?
And the Regional Conservation District and the California Association of Conservation Districts.
And what we're trying to do with that is how can Pacific Grove globally enhance the monarch population, not just within the sanctuary, but within other properties that we own and private properties. So Ms. Haynes' email talks about LiDAR evaluations of the sanctuary and that hemispecifical spear evaluations and retagging the trees and doing that. That's not part of the scope of Dr. Stu Weiss and Creekside Center for Earth Observations with this annual report. That's a larger project, and the city council has actually allocated $25,000 towards that project that we're going to use as matching funds. We're in the process of trying to secure that grant, which I'm pretty confident we'll get. Those are the items that Ms. Haynes is alluding to that we thought maybe we would realize this year, but the monies just haven't funneled through the Monterey Conservation District to the city yet to do that work. When we get to that point, we'll be issuing an RFP for such services.
Okay, as that regional effort progresses, that would be great to give us updates on that.
Absolutely.
I know the previous holder of your position, right before he left, gave a report that we were getting ready to embark on that. So there is interest, obviously. Thank you.
Let me start off. Thank you for the report with answering Mr. O'Meara's question about Stu Weiss. What is the, do you know offhand, what is the payment for his services annually offhand?
Mayor Peak, it's $10,000.
$10.
It's
Okay.
budgeted just through Public Works operations.
Right. And, you know, aside from city staff and the city arborist, there's no one else that is hired to help us manage the sanctuary. Is that right?
That is correct. We will retain the services of Tope's Tree Service to do the actual implementation of those removals, but otherwise that's correct.
Yeah. Without attempting to put Mr. Coe further on the spot, I've gone through and read Stu Weiss's resume. It's online. I've talked to other people and the Xerxes Society, and my impression is he's respected in this field. So I think as any consultant, expert consultant, we certainly don't have a butterfly expert on staff. And so we have to go out for consultant services. And I know that there's also been for many years, different opinions about how to manage the sanctuary. This isn't the first year by any means. It goes way back, and a lot of the opinions are just that. It's not, you can't prove anyone is right or wrong. We just take what seems to be the reasonable path. Most of it has to do with planting trees. It really comes down to trees. And they talk about nectar bushes, for example, but a lot of the discussion just comes down to, do I plant a tree there, or take that tree out, and what kind of tree? And so I can understand how folks would have different opinions as to what works for butterflies and what doesn't. And through the BNRC and through City Council, this report, hopefully that helps along the conversation with the community, and those that have different ideas, recommendations, please. They have been sent in the past. Mr. Sinacropi has sent reports to BNRC and I believe the City Council. I've certainly read them in the past, and Robert Pacelli as well. So all that dialogue is welcome, and my expectation is that Public Works, Mr. First, welcome. You'll be taking that into consideration. I think I saw a little bit of that weather station data was in the report, in Stu Weiss's report. So I'm glad to see he was using some of the resident data. So, and this item, this is, as was already mentioned, this is a report. We're council, we're not the experts in butterflies either. So we're dependent upon city staff and our city managers to manage the sanctuary as best they can. So thank you. And do we have any other council members? I see they disappeared again on Zoom. Do we have any other council members wishing to speak on this item?
I see no one online, sir.
Okay, then let's move on to item 13A, LULAC district elections letter. This is my item. And I've got a few slides if you could cue them up. All right. On, well, let's just go, this is the item. We could go to the next slide, please. So on August 25th, we received a demand letter from the League of United Latin American Citizens, pronounced LULAC, the acronym, and that is in the agenda packet and explains their thinking and at one point it says requesting, another point it says demand that Pacific Grove enters into district elections, which means you carve up the city into areas, one area per council member, and then the voters only get to vote for a council member that lives in their area or their district, as opposed to our current system where council members are elected at large, that everyone from every council candidate competes with all the other council candidates and all the voters get to choose. Well, and today it's three council members in each general election. All right, California Voting Rights Act, the acronym CVRA, and that's from 2001. So it's been around for 21 years, and it regulates at-large and district elections across the state. And that applies to special districts like the water district, fire districts, as well as cities. And that's got us lots of regulations. And then that CVRA was presented to council at our first meeting last December by our then city attorney, Dave Laredo. So I'm not going to go into some of the points in the CVRA, but it's in the agenda packet if you have, if you'd like to look further. Next, please. Next slide. All right, thank you. All right, our current system of electing at-large council members and the mayor is embedded in our city charter, Article 6. And our city attorney would like to hire outside counsel, an expert partner in a law firm. Well, it's, I won't read the string of names, but to help him with understanding where we're at and what are the options we have. Council has the city to respond to LULAC. And I've been reminded that, so we're going to, could we go next? Oh, okay. So first order of business is to direct the city attorney to advise council on a response to LULAC. And that would be obviously in the public, in open session, and then authorize myself to sign a legal services agreement for outside counsel to advise council on all the options. City attorney has suggested cost not to exceed $100,000 unless approved by council. And I've been reminded we need to set a term for the legal services agreement, a term when it will end. And I think that's it. Yes. Do we have any public comment?
We do have some online public comment.
All right,
Carmelita.
online then. Thank you.
Carmelita Garcia.
Welcome.
Carmelita Garcia.
Welcome.
You'll need to unmute yourself. But we can come back to her.
Yeah, let's go on.
Mark Chaquin.
Welcome.
Okay, am I unmuted? Okay, good
Yes,
evening,
yes.
Mayor and council members. I'd like to offer some thoughts for your consideration on this issue. There may be a moment when district representation by city council members is germane and makes sense in PG. We're a small city, but we have many different types and locations in neighborhoods. Some residents may feel that the focus of one area or may shortchange their interest and not meet their needs without their own district representatives. Tonight's driver, however, is a letter from the League of United Latin American Citizens demanding district representation. Their letter focuses not on our different neighborhoods, but on the ethnic aspect or full and fair representation and influence on elections. In that case, citing this California Voting Act of 2001, without first establishing its applicability in Pacific Grove's condition is imprudent at best and derelict at worst. In this regard, I would ask council members to study the research on the California Voting Act of 2001 and minority representation, where distinct district-based elections were implemented. For example, one such study concluded we find a dramatic positive effect on conversion in those districts where Latinos, A, constitute a sufficiently large share of the voting population, and B, are in large and residentially segregated districts. But when these conditions are not satisfied, we consistently see no estimated effects. This research was done by Abbott and Magazinic, was published in the American Journal of Political Science, volume 64, number 3. I can provide you with the DOI if you need it. For Pacific Grove, this suggests that we should not leap before we look, but instead we must look at the relevance of this charge and its justification. In the 2020 Pacific Grove population survey, there are about 15.5 thousand people in the city, and the 5 largest ethnic groups were white, non-Hispanic 77%, Asian, non-Hispanic 7%, white Hispanic 7%, other Hispanic 2%, 2 plus ethnicities identified non-Hispanic 4%, and 2 plus ethnicity identified Hispanic 2%. The total Hispanic population was 1.7K, 11%. The two questions now become, is 11% of the population a sufficiently large share of the voting population? And is that 11% of the population in large and residentially segregated districts? The answers today are, there is no standard statistical benchmark where 11% can be summarily called a large number of anything, let alone a voting population. And the standard that 11% of that population is in large and residentially segregated districts is not a condition in the city of Pacific Grove. So this letter's justifications for bullying and threatening the implementation of districting changes now fails. The rationale is not good. I thank you for incorporating these data into your actions tonight.
Thank you.
Inga Lawrence and Dimer.
Welcome.
Thank you. It is pretty ludicrous to think that we could divide the city into any kind of districts that would encompass a minority voting. I mean, Pacific Grove is so lily white, it's ridiculous. So that is ludicrous. However, it certainly is a reason to support Measure O and reduce city council, because going through the machinations of having districts, we certainly can't have more than 4. They're all going to be majority white. But it does play into the fact that we would be quote unquote going along with them because we certainly can't afford litigation, which brings up the money again. And I certainly hope that we would not spend $100,000 on another lawyer I realize you're going to get outside representation, but let's limit what we spend on that, please. This expenditure of funds for meaningless issues is really unconscionable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised.
Has Ms. Garcia solved her?
I believe so. Her hand is not raised.
Okay. All right. Before starting off with council discussion, I wanted to give Mr. Pirk, sorry, I had was going to have Mr. Pirk talk before public comment.
Mayor, I think you've
comments
covered it
to have?
well. Yeah, I believe you've covered it well in your comments as to where we are now. A legal review of the CVRA is appropriate at this time to determine what actions the city should take in response to the LULAC letter. With regards to Marguerite Leone as the proposed outside counsel, as pointed out in the agenda report, she has substantial experience in representing many public agencies throughout the state of California on the CVRA issues. After the review is completed by the attorneys, by myself and Ms. Leone, this item will be brought back to the council for discussion and for further public input at that time. And the only other thing I have to say is in regard to the length of the term of the agreement with Ms. Leone, I would recommend 2 years. It may well take less than that, but rather than to underestimate how long it's going to take, I would suggest a 2-year term.
Council
And
discussion.
that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question for you, Mr. Perrick. The letter came to us recently, and it doesn't say in there that I see where it is requiring a response within a certain day or a certain time frame. So, one of our actions tonight would be to respond to them, or saying you would respond to them. What would that response look like, and what is the timeline for responding from your perspective?
Yeah, the answer to that is going to depend upon our legal review. So that's the answer I would give you. Once we do that review, we'll be able to provide that information.
And what would the legal review consist of? What would we be looking at?
Well, we would be looking at the provisions in the California Voting Rights Act, and we would be looking at the facts with respect to the city of Pacific Grove in terms of its demographics, among other things.
Okay. And I'm just not at this point in time supportive of hiring an outside attorney. I would like to have Brooks, Williamson and Sorensen, your firm, do the best that you can with some kind of directional advice over the next month or two. And then maybe we do need to call in an outside attorney if it ends up kind of where we need to bring in a deeper bench, let's say, deeper representation. But with just a letter, it feels like a little bit of a hammer on a small, like overkill, basically. So what would be your reaction to trying to take some first steps or being able to give that kind of advice rather than, the full answer with your law firm?
Based on my experience with the California Voting Rights Act, and I have experience with it, I believe that it is the kind of an issue that does require an attorney with a specialization in that. I'm aware that Ms. Leone, this is her area of expertise, election law, and specifically she has substantial experience with the CVRA. And when you say it's just a letter, well, it is a letter that has been presented to the city. The analysis that is going to be required is one that, in my opinion, and based on my experience, the city would be well served to retain Ms. Leone and to do it now rather than to wait.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of questions. Mr. Pierik, it said cost not to exceed $100,000. And then you mentioned it could take up to a couple of years. Is that like $100,000 or like $50,000 a year? I actually have a couple of questions, but is it like $50,000 a year? And then if she goes over, it's another 50?
The not to exceed amount would apply to the entire term of the contract.
Okay. And then is Tori Hannah online?
Yes, I am here available.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Hannah. So if this is the $100,000 is approved, what fund does that come out of?
That would come out of the general fund.
Okay. And we just finally got that since I don't know, it's just we finally got that up since the COVID situation. I'm not sold on the 100,000, to be upfront with you on that.
It may, my answer to that would be, it may be, we see at this point, we don't know what the ultimate cost is going to be. And we are aware that, this is something that's going to require some degree of analysis, and we will, have more information, as we move along. But the 100,000 right now is a cap, if you will, rather than not to have any amount. And I know the council, because of budgetary reasons with its contracts, does put a dollar limit and also a term limit. So that is what is being proposed.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, if our city attorney is advising that we need outside legal support, I'm going to listen to that. But that being said, I think we need to need to provide a scope of what it is that we're trying to answer. And I think what we're trying to answer, at least in the near term, in the short term, is a focused analysis of, do we comply or do we litigate? And I think that is a short-term question. I think that answer to that question could be answered in 6 months. I am guessing that answer, since we're dealing with an expert who has vast knowledge in this arena, doesn't have to come up to speed on it, as it were, can efficiently provide an answer to that question, and that $50,000 would be adequate for providing that short-term analysis of whether we litigate or comply. So I'm willing to listen to our city attorney and if he thinks we need outside counsel, but I would like to scope that effort as a short-term analysis. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Pyrick, would this 100,000 authorization include demographic services, which I assume you and Ms. Leone would need to give us options?
Typically, the demographic services are done with a demographer, but the 100,000 could be included within that. So the answer is yes. As far as the question about how long it's going to take, it's been my experience that this analysis and process can sometimes be extended, especially given the fact that the change to districts would not be happening in 2022 because it's too late for that to happen. The earliest that the earliest election where this would take effect would be 2024, which is why I had proposed the 2 years. If the council is concerned about the length of time for the contract, that could certainly, be reduced to 1 year, and we could revisit that later. As to the dollar amount, I'm suggesting that this is not a simple process based on my experience. It is not a short process that can be done in a matter of a couple of months. It's just one that takes more time than that. That's been my experience. But if the council is not interested in a 2-year term, then we can certainly reduce it to 1 year. And if the council wishes to authorize something less than 100,000, that's within their discretion, and we can revisit it later. I'm just giving you these recommendations based on my experience.
Do we have, I can't see all the council members on Zoom.
Councilmembers Peduri and McAdams have their hands raised.
Okay, Councilmember Peduri.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Pyrick too. Mr. Pyrick, you had suggested that we defer this item to a latter session for a closed session to review your legal interpretation or legal analysis of this particular item. Is that still going to be the case, or has that changed?
There's not been a change.
And your legal analysis then is going to be in connection with the specialized lawyer?
Yes.
Is the other item that I would like to know is, will your firm be able to provide your opinion around how the ballot that we have right now, the Measure O ballot, which may potentially cause a council member count to go down, how does that affect or not affect this particular item? Will your firm be able to provide that analysis?
Yeah, that item, that measure is on the November 2022 ballot. The change, if the city were to change to districts, it would not happen until the earliest election where that would be impacted would be November of 2024.
Okay, and in your, if I may then, in your opinion, would it be prudent for the city to actually consider hiring a specialized attorney or firm following the results of the November 2022 ballot? Because that, to me, that Measure O represents diversity in itself and represents technically other racial ethnicities to participate in the council process. If that does get impacted, I can see where this is going. But do you think it would be prudent of us to postpone the hiring of any kind of lawyer until the ballot is until we know the outcome of the ballot?
My advice is that we retain the specialized lawyer now and not wait until after November. The analysis that can be done could include Measure O as part of that process. But I'm recommending that the special attorney be retained now, not later.
Okay, I would just, to me, I mean, I'm kind of like with the speakers that chimed in. I don't see how we're going to change essentially the CVRA needs to prove dilution of a certain minority for really a case to happen. And I don't, with Pacific Grove, just the makeup of Pacific Grove, I don't see how the outcome of election or redistricting would actually change an ethnicity to come into the council. So I don't see that happening. And I would like to also point out that the city of Santa Monica has successfully filed a case against such an item, and they came to the conclusion that basically dilution, whoever the plaintiffs were could not actually prove dilution. So therefore the city won the case. And Cal Cities actually has an amicus brief related to that particular case as well. So I would like to kind of like, to me, both these cities, Pacific Grove and Santa Monica, in this case at least, they seem to be having similar parallels. And I personally, I don't see why we need to engage a outside attorney right away. But I'm open to suggestions. But I want it to be capped to 50,000, not 100,000. Thanks.
Okay, my advice to you is that opinions not be expressed today with regards to what the what actions the city should or should not take. My advice to you is that the council should consider the recommendation that's before you, which is to retain Marguerite Leone. If you wish to reduce the amount or reduce the term, that's fine. But I'm not recommending that there not be further discussion with regards to the legal issues until the legal review has been conducted. As far as the Santa Monica case is concerned, the city lost that case at the trial level. The Court of Appeal reversed that decision, and now the California Supreme Court has granted review of that decision, and it is before the California Supreme Court now. So there are a lot of legal issues involved here, and I'm recommending that the council withhold any input with regards to what their views are on these legal issues at this time until the legal analysis has been done and you've been advised accordingly.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So I would say my view right now is that we cap it at 50,000 and limit it to a shorter time frame and or longer time frame, but I want it capped at 50,000. Thanks.
Councilmember McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. Our city attorney has been very clear in what his recommendation is, and for me, with this issue, it's very complicated. It takes a very long time, so it doesn't matter to me if we approve a not to exceed of 50,000 or 100,000. Whatever the case is, I mean, either way, if it exceeds 50,000, then Mr. Purig will have to come back and ask for additional funds. So I understand the desire of 100,000. Just because we're approving and not to exceed 100,000 doesn't mean that we have to spend that or that we will spend that. But I would really encourage my colleagues to listen to the clear direction that is being provided by our city attorney this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have one more question, and then Councilmember Coletti was saying, in the response to LULAC, like we need to understand the scope and decide whether we're going to litigate or comply with the letter. And I'm having a hard time understanding the litigate part. I mean, because we're not being sued. There's no are we? I mean, this is just a letter asking us to comply. So again, I'm kind of in this camp over here of like not really wanting to do a whole lot with this letter and just see what happens. Maybe that's a bad move, but we're not being sued. There's nothing to litigate at this point.
There's a potential for litigation. And my advice is that you take this letter seriously and that the council retain special counsel to provide the legal analysis so that you can more fully understand the significance of these issues. It is not something that is a minor matter. It is a very significant matter.
Okay. Well, I look forward to learning more about it when that time comes.
I'm going to support this recommendation by our city attorney, though it is a little bit more than a little bit of sticker shock, $100,000 and 2 years, but maybe to, have the big picture out in front of us and then check along the way. We're going to be meeting, I assume, fairly frequently on this matter. And so we'll get updates on how much money is being spent. And as Councilmember Coletti already stated, the cost and the effort involved will definitely depend upon what action council decides to take. So I think it's better to have a big number and lots of time out in front. And if it's as we go along this path, we find out that we're not going to be needing to spend so much money and we'll resolve it perhaps even sooner, so be it. We'll let the chips fall where they may, but I want to give our city attorney enough leeway to go ahead. And also assuming that this 100,000 gives him also the ability to start obtaining demographic services when that becomes appropriate. So anyhow, that's my thought. Mayor Pro Tem Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I would consider this, up to not to exceed 50,000. And then if more is needed, that Mr. Pirrick comes back to us and says, hey, we need another, whatever it may be, 25,000, 30,000. But I think we ought to stick with the one, start it off with not to exceed 50,000 and let Mr. Pirrick come back to us just to see. We want to support him too on this, but 100,000 is a lot of money, especially when it comes out of general fund.
Mr. Pirrick, question, will 50,000 get us through the first 1 or 2 meetings?
Oh, I certainly think so. It's just been my experience that the analysis isn't, and I've indicated 100,000 because that's been based on my experiences that it can cost up to that much. It sometimes can cost many more. I mean, the city of Santa Monica was given as an example, and they've spent several $1 million on this. And so it is I understand it's not a small number, but certainly if the will of the council is to approve a lower number, then that would be appropriate for you to do it, and we can come back later and have this discussion again later. I was just thinking that with the 100,000, that would provide us with at least a cap. But if you want to make the cap lower, that's certainly within the discretion of the council.
Would someone like to make a motion? Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the recommended action, but place a cap at $50,000 and a term of 1 year.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a vote, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Emilio,
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmembers Tomlinson,
No.
McAdams,
Aye.
and Bittery.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1-1. Councilmember Smith absent.
Thank you, everyone, for participating, those here tonight from the public, as well as those on Zoom, staff, my colleagues. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Have a nice evening.
Thanks, everyone.